What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses. For what? For the kingdom of God. Let us pray.
You've cursed this family.
Who's there? Oh God, my Lord, I now begin. Oh, help me and don't leave my sin. For I repentant thou shalt be. From evil I will turn to thee. None ever shall destroy my faith. For I repentant thou shalt be. Oh God, my Lord, I now begin. Oh, help me and don't leave my sin. For I repentant thou shalt be. From evil I will turn to thee.
Let us leave the wood.
I got chills from that.
Yeah, that, like, even though I've seen it now multiple times and looking at the trailer again, it's so fucked. One thing I do want to point out actually is I couldn't help but think, and I remember thinking that when I seen the trailer the first time, it sounds like someone's clapping cheeks. About half to have that weird, like,
Oh yeah, throughout the.
yeah.
All right, bring it in, man. Bring it in.
Hey everyone, what's going on? I'm Aaron from Class Horrorcast, or First Class Horror. We're going to do something a little bit different this time, and we're going to, I guess, break down and analyze the movie The Witch. Something that I actually wanted to do for a long time, but it was only on your, I guess, recommendation again, Tom, that I kind of actually sat down and went, actually, wait, yeah, this movie's like a lot better and a lot fucking scarier than I gave it credit. And then just some lore surrounding witches and stuff. I'm joined by a very special guest who I am not going to butcher his usual introduction. So why don't you tell everybody who you are?
I am Tomcat, aka Tom Thompson, or the Raptilian, whatever you want to call me. I could care less. But I am one of the hosts of Strange Brew Podcast, and essentially, Aaron, I believe, is under the umbrella too of the Host Heads production, and he's kind of part of Strange Brew Podcast now, also as one of the hosts because we've been doing a lot of content together. And I'm super excited about this, and I'll tell you specifically why this movie unnerved me, and especially on my second viewing. I remember seeing it a couple years ago. I swore that my girlfriend saw it, but she was like, when we watched it, she was like, no, I don't remember this. And didn't you say, was this your first time? I thought you said, or have you seen it before and then gave it another visit?
Yeah, like I watched it. It was one of those things I remember everybody talking about it. And like I put it on and like seen bits of the movie. Like I know that I probably watched the entire runtime, but hadn't actually seen majority of it.
Yeah, it's a fucking spooky film. Yeah, and when I started watching The Witch, essentially, like, I saw it a couple years ago, and then I was like, you know what, it'd be a really good film to watch outside. I'm watching a lot of horror movies for all the people that are a fan of your show. I love horror movies, always have, always will. And throughout the summer, you have a projector and stuff like that, so I've been watching movies outside. But I've been watching them on magic mushrooms. So it changes the experience a little bit. I've watched things like Phantasm, a lot of strange films. The one that fucked me up the most was definitely The Village, because I'm like, whoa, this thing is that thing, and they're like, and I forgot about what happened in the film because I'd seen it since I was a kid. And I watched it. I was like, you know what would be a good idea? I was thinking of all these different movies that I wanted to do last week, and I was like, let's watch The Witch. And my girlfriend didn't really remember watching. I swore. I was like, who else would I have watched this with? I'm sitting down by myself, maybe, but. And I went outside and took about a gram of mushrooms after I dosed the day before, just a microdose, and no visuals, but I was still in the mindset of psychedelics, essentially. Slight visuals, maybe, but very slight. So I had a beer or two, and I got sucked into the movie hard in that time, Aaron. I'm having all these very contemplating thoughts. What was your experience before I start diving more into mine?
I didn't have as cool of an experience.
Yeah.
But one thing I will say, and I think I said this to you earlier in the week, that I definitely felt like I had a really strange experience watching the movie, even though I was stone cold sober.
Yeah.
I really sat down and I kind of took your advice with it was late at night. I was in a quiet room. There was no light. It was just a movie. And you see, a lot of times when I watch a movie now, I don't even realize I'm doing it. I've got my phone in my hand, or I'm kind of half doing other shit. And a lot of times it kind of takes me out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like this was the first thing in a long time that I actually sat there and went, right, I'm giving this my undivided attention for the next however long. And I really got drawn into even to the point where I felt like I was hypnotized by some of the way I can't remember the guy's name who plays the dad.
Oh yeah.
His voice was hypnotic.
Yeah, his weird, I can't describe his voice. And for everybody that's listening to this or watching it, I suggest you watch the movie. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
before, and we should have this before we really get into anything, is if you haven't yet, pause. You can rent it fairly cheaply. It is a very good movie. It gets you in the Halloween season, but sit down, watch it. It's only an hour and a half, which I like. It does everything perfectly within that hour and a half. I feel like movies are drawn out now and they try to make them super long when they don't need to be. And this one's kind of perfect. So everyone, before we get into this, pause this, stop it, and go watch the movie. And if you have already seen it, get ready, because we're talking about a lot of crazy shit.
But it is I feel like the trailer definitely doesn't do it justice. I would say this is probably one of the best witch movies that I've seen. There's so many different, we can talk about some of the movies and shit like that, but to me, this was definitely one of the best done witch movie, talking about witches, when you think about that time error. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you look at this movie, it kind of makes me feel like, and I'm probably wrong in saying this, but there hasn't really been a close second.
Mm-mm. No, I don't and I'm trying to think what other movie has gave me this atmosphere and tone. And like I said, I was on a gram of mushrooms, so I'm sitting there and I feel and it's on a 100-inch screen outside, and I'm kind of in my feels about the movie. And then I came out of it me and my fiance sat there. I put on a Hammer film. Night Creatures or whatever. I couldn't pay attention to it. It was about pirates and shit, and my girlfriend wasn't interested, so we were talking to each other, and then we're talking about our own haunted experiences, right? We're talking about where's energy go while I'm still and she's had her own ghost experiences, and we're talking about houses that we used to live in that had weird energy. So I was in this weird mindset, and then I'm also I was frightened after the film, coming from outside, thinking about how I've used the Ouija board a lot. For people that don't know me, I have 3 of them. We're going to do a whole episode about it for a Halloween special. And I've messed around a lot of that occult stuff. And then when I'm sober, my waking mind, I'm I don't give a shit. I know I can take these things off of me, essentially, whatever attachments may come from using these type of objects and occultism. And as I left walking outside, I was I don't want to mess with that shit anymore. It's fucking freaky. The ending is, we'll get into it later. I kind of want to build up throughout the film of what you think. But the ending is the best part of the movie, in my opinion. And it's a very interesting artistic way of viewing witches and freaky. And I was thinking about it, I do believe that, like, I believe that some of it, right? And when it comes back then, and men pointing fingers and all that stuff at people and saying, like, the stuff I was reading about witches, like, even if you were just smarter, essentially, if you're a woman that kind of had intellect, they would start pointing the finger at you for being a witch. If you were an old woman that didn't have fucking family, they'd point the finger at you. But I do believe that people practiced all sorts of weird witchcraft and things and found books that maybe they shouldn't have in a time era that was all about religion. And it freaked me out thinking about that thought of, like, do these entities and things that have maybe attached themselves to witches or people using that type of magic still exist to this day? And I think they do.
And it's so fucked as well how it was a time period where it was nearly as simple. I think this kind of ties into when we spoke about asylums and mental hospitals and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was during the era where you could be like, basically throw your wife into an asylum, like, well,
Yeah,
don't
same
her
thing.
now, she's psychotic, that's it, like, forget about her. And this was similar in the sense of you could just accuse somebody of being a witch and that was it. It was basically like, yeah, you're fucked, we're gonna burn you at the stake or like stone
It
you to
literally
death.
seems like that. It was so easy to just be like, that's you. You're a witch? Okay. And you could say anything, especially as a male figure and someone who is, say, more prominent in town. Look at the fact that, like, people like serial killers like John Wayne Gacy and shit, like, work themselves within the town and try to be an upstanding citizen. You know what I mean? Then you have these scumbag dudes that could do it. Like, I'm an upstanding guy. I help the community. And then you have the ability to point out people to literally get murdered because you might not like them. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And back then with these witches, I was listening to a story and I should have written down the name, but I can't remember the name of the guy. He became a famous witch hunter at one point, and witches were believed to have this thing called a witch's teeth, which is like a
Oh, I
special,
heard about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a special nipple that they would have to nurse imps, I think it is, not to be mistaken with gimps.
So what is an imp isn't that like a fucking little creature?
Yeah, like some kind of little goblin shit.
Shit.
Um, and this dude he had this weird like tool that he made, like
Oh, I
again,
heard
like, it's so random. It's like,
you
oh
can
yeah,
poke you, right?
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a witch hunter. This is a witch hunting tool that I invented, and it was like I can't remember exactly. It was basically like a pen was the idea of it,
You could
and
stick you with it, and what would happen?
yeah, he would stick you with it, and if you didn't feel the prick of this tool that he had, it was like 100% that you were a witch. So what he actually done was, they found out years later, he ended up actually being killed himself. He was sentenced to death for all these different crimes, but it turns out that the entire time he had a retractable pin in it, so he would just decide. So nobody ever,
Yeah, it was.
anything he ever done it, they would never feel it.
And the thing is, wasn't I think I might have like looked at the same thing you were looking at, because it talks about how it would just be for money too.
Yeah,
It would
yeah,
just be like whatever, like, and it's like at the time where people were poor, you're trying to get rich quick scheme, and everyone was religious. That's why I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, religion, I don't know, might be the issue in a lot of these things that we see in our history of like overzealous people, you could say, but like just they're too far gone. Where some of these religions were, and I have family members that are like super devout Christian and I respect their beliefs, but it seems like back then some of that shit was the issue of being like, if you go outside of this book, the Bible, in the way that we interpret it in this section of this religion, and if you don't understand that or you look outside of that, we're going to burn you at the stake.
yeah. And I mean, I guess even into more modern times, like look at when something like The Exorcist came out, and like
And everyone freaked out. Yeah.
uproar, and it's like, what the fuck? Like that was in the 70s. It's like, what is? Come on, like we've got to do better than that. Like,
They thought everyone was possessed and it like freaked everybody out. We talked about that movie a long time ago on this podcast, Cursed Films, because of the stuff that was happening on the set. And
mhm.
it's just like, And this is what this film felt like too. Is like it felt like even in the trailer it says, we watched the trailer beforehand for all the audio listeners, and it says it's you're watching something you shouldn't watch or something like that. And it's just like it feels like that it feels cursed in some way.
Yeah, and something I didn't know was the director was actually inspired to write the movie. He had like apparently a lifelong, from like early childhood, a fascination with witches, and he used to be brought on visits to I don't have the name of it, a plantation anyway. It's basically a, a complex of museums to represent English pilgrims that settled in the area that he grew up.
Yeah.
And like he got a fascination with like witches, witchcraft in that time period. And this has been something that he's wanted to. I think a lot of people are fascinated by this. It was like his debut feature film, but he was like, no, this was like a lifetime's work.
What was his debut film?
This,
This was?
yeah.
Oh, fucking
He had
shit. That's
made,
crazy.
yeah, he had made like, short films and stuff, but this was like his first feature length. Like,
I'm always like, how can I do this? Why can't I fucking like,
I know,
I
yeah.
just wish I was raised in a different, I don't, it sounds bad, but family or something. I like, you have to respect where you are in life and respect what incarnation in my belief you got and just try to live this experience the best way you can. But it's just like, man, I had such good ideas. I was an 11-year-old kid, dude. And I was writing fucking horror movie ideas for slasher films. And I was like taking pictures of this like mask I had with this like pitchfork. And then I would make up an idea beyond about that story. And I used to do shit like that. And I wanted to be like a director. Like I loved Wes Craven. And the thing is, like, life just didn't display that opportunity. I was struggling as a teenager. I don't know what the fuck I was doing with life. And it's just like, if I could have taken my outlets and put it towards that, I could be fucking Wes Craven Jr. right now, right?
I could be interviewing you right now.
I
About a
know.
movie. And and you're right about that as well. I recently found a copybook that I must have had in like school, and like there's like shitloads of these short stories. Like I must have been like 9,
So
and it's
funny.
like all these like horror movie ideas, and it's like really like cringy, like.
Oh, mine are super bad. I wish I could find them.
But it's like, you're definitely right about that, because I feel like I've only like barely got my life on the rails in the last couple of years, and it's
I
like,
know.
fuck, if I had all those years of like a normal life, maybe
Me
I'd be
too.
in a completely different position right now.
I feel like, dude, I've said to my fans on the podcast, like I was kind of in and out of jail being a stupid kid when I was a teenager, the youth jail, and just going out of like holding cells, being an idiot, like get on probation, then drinking. Essentially, I was like it. But like, and it's I was like, why couldn't I just live a normal life and maybe not put myself through some of this shit and like had so I could progress? Because now I see I was like, I could do this shit. I was super creative as a kid, and it's just like I had a cliff, and then it just kind of went off, and I was like,
Mm.
well, I could have been Stanley Kubrick, man. I could fucking make symbology and fucking films and shit. And I was like, I could figure it out.
To be fair though, I don't think that's went away. Like you can clearly see it. I think if somebody even listens to one episode of your podcast, I think it's quite clear that that spark is still there,
Yeah,
which is
for
good.
sure. I still have that kid in me where I'm like, man, I want to believe, and I always say to Anton, the fantastical, and sometimes he's more like grounded on certain subjects where I'm like, no, I want to believe in fucking reptilian people, even if they are just killing kids. And I was like, I want that. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think that reality, especially doing psychedelics, is not as um, solid as we think it is. And being on mushrooms really allows you to see that. And when I was on this film, that's what I was thinking about, like these forces, this supernatural force that if you use it in the wrong way can be called upon and maybe possess somebody. And what they would think is witchcraft, but there was this them, messing around with stuff. Because the Ouija board has existed for whatever, how long, since the 1800s, and people were getting into like the fucking talking board. But it's probably existed for centuries, because I would make it from a piece of paper in a shot glass. And you know what I mean? So just calling upon those things with some sort of means to communicate, like they used to do the knocking, which they don't know if it was faked from the Fox sisters, but this idea that like these witchy things, like the Fox sisters did what they did in the 1800s, back in the 1600s, they would have been dragged away in 2 seconds and been burnt at the stake for the even faking it
Yeah.
in the way they did. You know what I mean?
Here's a question for you, actually, before we dive right into this.
This movie, yeah.
I don't want to drag it out too long, but
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on the idea that, you know, and I suppose it kind of ties into, I've seen some arguments about like how this movie actually plays out. You know, some people believe that, you know, that there is no witch. There's a lot of theories about like when you
That's
get
what I thought the first
yeah,
time I watched it.
yeah,
Okay?
when you get to the end, like there's a lot of different conclusions I think you can come to.
Yeah.
And which is great because different people can come away from it with a different idea, and it can be everything. But what's your thoughts on the idea of, you know, if your belief in something is strong enough that like you nearly manifest it as, now I don't mean as reality for others,
Yeah.
but you know, if you wholeheartedly believe in something, do you think that you can essentially manifest that as your reality?
I do think that in this reality, okay, because I have my own crazy beliefs, right, with to do with the reptilians, and essentially, if you don't even want to believe in lizard people, you don't fucking have to. Just imagine a dark force. In religion times, you would classify as Satan, kind of, or Lucifer, and and then what they believed in this witchcraft shit, right, essentially is praising these dark entities, these dark energies that exhume fear, right? They take people's bad emotions, and when you're suffering and in pain, they use that because it's an energy force. You can feel it when you have those kind of emotions. And so I believe that they're trying to stop us from being as creative as we are. There's an idea when it comes to aliens to talk about very quickly, is that if we draw a piece of paper, it's kind of like witchcraft too. If we draw on a piece of paper, we're able to take thoughts and put it on paper, and actually draw it out and create something. The reptilians can't do that, or these dark energies, these dark beings from a different reality. They're not able to do that, but they can take that picture and change it or mutate it to what they want it to be. They can take something that's already created by a creative entity or an individual that is like a free thinking individual, and then they can take it and they can alter it. So think about our reality, right? And how the hospital system is upside down, religion is upside down, everything's inverted. David I talks about this, where it's all inverted and it's turned bad from good, and we don't really notice it. And these things are just slowly doing this to exhume our energy. But I do believe, in fucking in my long process of telling you this, that you're able to bring stuff into your reality. I do believe intention. The energy goes where the intention flows, essentially. And like that's what soccer stadiums is like. Everyone's freaking out, and the soccer players can feel the energy of the crowd. And that's part of this. That energy is there. If you don't want to believe in the afterlife, it's evident everywhere, in my opinion, when it comes to energies. Now, the energies don't die. But that's why you can do it with witches too. It's manifesting. And if you're thinking about all this stuff at this time where they maybe are plagued by some sort of dark force, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just,
this is still about witchcraft, because the energy of witchcraft.
Yeah, because the more I kind of looked into that, and it's a fascinating idea, and I don't think it's as far fetched as some people might.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people think, oh, manifest your reality, and I don't mean like some weird like Tony Robbins shit.
Talking about The Biggest Secret, man. I watched that shit when I was a kid. Like, the biggest secret is you can just think about something and it'll happen. It's like, not always if you have dark energies coming down you.
Yeah, like I don't, well, you know, when I say that and I ask that question, I don't mean you know, if you sit in your bedroom every day jerking off and wish for $1 million that, you know, one day $1 million is just going to show up in the room. I don't mean that, but I definitely do think that there is something to, and even, you know, we've had private conversations about different life experiences we've both had, which is not for the show, but
yeah,
it's one of those things again. Like I often had times where I was like, how much of this did I actually actively manifest without?
Me too. I'm like, what?
Yeah, like not having any self-awareness at the time, but I was like, wait, did I like manage to manifest like 99% of this problem and issue and ongoing thing?
Yeah, and how you're able to push, like, I think that my fiance's mom always says you fear what you bring near what you fear, or you fear what you bring near. Like, essentially, if you are afraid of something and you keep thinking about it and analyzing it, you're going to make it worse. And that's why intention, and that's why magic to me, like whatever magic is, and the black magic, and I have a fucking thick ass Aleister Crowley book. It has all of his work in there. And I haven't dived into Aleister Crowley. More or less, I've researched about him. I've read a couple of things by him, but not really dived too deep. And I want to. We did a whole episode about Aleister Crowley, but that intention of magic, and Anton wants me to read White Stains, one of his poems for the Patreon, because he's like, I just want to hear your reaction to some of his poems because they're fucked. I've read parts of them like years ago. But that it is just like this idea of this intention of magic, right? Where you just to me, it's intention where you're like, okay, I'm going to sit here, and I always joke about like coming on a piece of paper with something written on it. So you give it some meaning. So you're like, I want this person to be cursed for a week. And then you like come on the piece of paper, and then you light it on fire, and you like put this fucking energy out there. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like it is. Like, I feel like I've thought about doing that.
Yeah. No, and another fascinating and absolutely fascinating character is Aleister Crowley. Again, that's a conversation for a completely different time.
But I was thinking about that idea of black magic. The magic.
Yeah, he's such a, again, like a polarizing character in a lot of way, and he had a lot of I guess belief systems and different things, and I do think that it's not as, even I used to think it at one point that it was as cut and dry as like, oh yeah, okay, magic. Yeah, wow, Harry Potter. Which
I love Harry Potter. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm not knocking Harry Potter, but I think a lot of people when they hear that conversation, they're kind of imagining like, you're making a feather levitate from the table or something like that. It's like that's not what we're talking about. It's a completely different world.
That's why, black magic is different than like right hand path versus left hand path, and how people like David Blaine and fucking mind free Chris Angel, fucking dude. I used to love him when I was a kid, and as I got older, the older I got, the more I realized how big of a douchebag Chris Angel actually really is. But he's essentially tricking your mind. It's an illusion. It's not really magic. It's an illusion. Black magic essentially is like, putting your intention in something, like and there's all sorts of ways they've done it. The salt circle, and then you call upon a fucking demon. And either way, people have done this in our history. You know, like in the idea of witches, I want to talk about is like, essentially we get it. Like, what do you think first? Essentially, when we grew up, the idea of witches was that they were like ugly, grotesque creatures. This film does it a different kind of way, but a little like it's, you know what I mean?
Side note, actually, that movie, The Witches, from the 90s, scared the shit out of me as a kid.
It's weird. I was like, I bet you if I bring this photo, it's essentially, for the audio listeners, the iconic one of the witches when they reveal themselves from the movie The Witches. Didn't like the remake that much, just my opinion, but the original did freak me out. And I thought that you would also think the same thing, which is funny. I brought it just
I rewatched that again and again quite a bit. We used to have a thing in Ireland every Saturday evening at like 6 p.m. This was like back in the times of like TV guides and stuff where you had to be at the TV.
Those are the days. Yeah.
And like we had this thing every Saturday evening. There was like the news at 6 p.m. and then I think it was like 6:30. We had this thing called the Big Movie, and they would pick like, and I could spin off like, I can pick up, like I can basically name the films they would have on rotation. It would be like the 90s Dennis the Menace, Home Alone, The Witches. It was all that like style of movie kind of at that time. And I remember watching The Witches for the first time and being like, oh yeah, it's a movie about witches or whatever. I did not expect that transformation scene.
No, I know.
In the boardroom. Like that shit is grotesque.
Yeah, I know. And everyone just look up the picture for the audio listeners, because she has like, it's the to me, one of the most creepy looking, at least for the 90s, let's say, style of what a witch could look like. Because we've all seen, which I would love to talk about. I watched a whole doc about it, but The Wizard of Oz, because essentially, as we're talking about this movie, we're going to, and witchcraft and witches in general, we're going to think about what comes to our mind and our subconsciousness about witches specifically. So, like, it comes from Wizard of Oz. You see that first depiction of her in green makeup on a broom, and at least the like subconscious of like social, I guess you could say, demographics of like, you know what I mean? It's in our social consciousness. Like movies specifically do this, especially that movie, and it was Cursed. But that's like, to me, the first time I think I really saw the depiction of a witch when I was a kid.
Yeah, and you know what? Like looking
Halloween
at that,
costumes.
yeah, like Shudder had a Cursed, I think it was called Cursed Films series, and they
Yes,
like
I
used
actually
it.
really enjoyed that, and now
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about.
yeah, and like I remember watching the episode about that, and like I kind of forgot how unsettling like a lot of that was.
Oh, and especially with the little people and what was going on, and
Yeah, it's just like
Judy
freaky.
Garland. Yeah.
Um, okay, so I suppose to dive back into this movie, do you want to go from the start? Do you want to? Is there anything you want to say
Yeah,
about
and that's what I was thinking
this
about.
movie?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, like how we should bring it in from the beginning, essentially. And I have one question to ask you that I was really dying to. What the fuck do you think of the twins? Oh,
Bizarre,
yeah.
strange. Made me really uncomfortable. Actually,
Yeah, they make me uncomfortable watching the film. Like, and
even looking at that little GIF you have for people who can't see us right now and are listening audio only. Um, Tom has some gifs of the twins like skipping through the. I was gonna say I don't wasteland. It looks like
yeah, I know.
they're. I don't know. There's just something about them, and this is gonna sound awful, but at one point while watching it, I actually paused the movie to Google to see if like they had some kind of like special needs or something.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean that in like a like haha
Just seeing
funny
if
way.
they
But
were,
I'm just like,
yeah.
there's something like off here. I was like, there's no way those kids could be that good at acting.
I know, yeah, I know what you mean, because they literally, to me, crawl under your skin. And I could talk about, like, I wanted to specifically talk about the twins for a while just because of their characters. There was a point in the movie we watched outside, and I was like, and I'm on fucking a gram mushroom. I was like, I hate these fucking annoying kids. I was like, can they just die first? Like, and I was like, and I forgot about the film. Like, I watched it like years ago when it first probably came out. I was like, 2016 is a fucking while ago. So I was like, I probably watched it around when it came out. And it was one of those movies that stayed with me. I was like, this was creepy. I can't watch it all the time. So I was like, let's watch it outside. I probably won't watch it for another couple fucking years. And those kids gave me the same feeling I watched it the first time, where I was like, man, they're annoying as shit. The way, even like in the trailer when she's like, bah, bah. I'm like, can you fucking stop
Yeah,
that, man? It's
yeah.
one of those kids for everyone. If like, even if you haven't seen this and for some strange reason you're listening to just to hear us talk about witches and stuff like that, it is like the way he filmed it was specifically made them annoying. It's like one of those kids that like doesn't stop like poking something he shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Give me your thoughts more about the twins.
Yeah, and I feel like I guess to kind of open that up a bit, a lot of the characters I found, and I don't mean this in a this is not meant in a bad way. I think it was intentional. Like while you're watching the movie, and I think it's really reflective of actual like the actual human race, to be honest, which I know it's set in a different time period, but I think that it still boils down to that's as people, that's kind of how we would behave in said situation. But like, you know, even you've got the two twins, the mother is like fucking.
Yeah, I was gonna wait to talk about her, but if you want to get into her now, I was just like, those twins just completely annoyed me, and I thought their characters were well done, and the fact that you kind of feel sympathy, then you fucking hate them, then you kind of feel sympathy, and I want to say also that I didn't realize through fucking like maybe the ending of the film, and I was like looking up and looking into it, and like now messaging you and wanting to talk about it, is that I didn't fucking toot in my mouth. I didn't realize that they were banished. Like I didn't maybe if I didn't pay attention to the beginning of the film, but I didn't realize for a while that they got like sent out of the main civilization.
Yeah. So here's something funny.
Which
And
is
I was actually
scary
going to
in
mention
general.
this, and I was like, oh, wait, that's going to make me sound like fucking retarded. But even though I watched this twice, it was only when I was watching, I think, a YouTube breakdown of the movie. Somebody said something about banished, or they left where they were, and that's the whole thing. And she's like, because I know at one point, what's the main girl's character's name?
Thomasin. Because I remember that. I was like, whose
Yeah,
name is kind of like my name?
Thomasin, and she says something about going back or something like that, and I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? And I
Yeah,
was
because they're in the middle of fucking nowhere, and that's what makes
yeah,
it creepy.
and I was like, oh, because to me the vibe I got was like, oh, just everything in the world is fucked, and everybody's
Yeah,
just doing their own thing. I maybe I'm wrong, and if someone's listening to this, can correct me, but I definitely missed the part as well where they like explicitly said, "Oh yeah, yeah, that time we were banished from that town."
and they say something about, well, we can't go back, or where they do. I remember hearing it, and I was like, what? Because the whole time, right, I'm thinking that this is back in essentially this is before essentially what he says. I say essentially a lot. Before the Salem witch trial. It's before the Salem witch trials. It's before this has happened, is what I've read. So as they're like getting into the film, it's beforehand, and then I'm like, hey, well, I just think that they're like everyone gets a plot of land, and I was talking to Chelsea about this. You buy it from essentially the queen or whoever,
Mhm.
country you reside in, because they were just fucking. I was like, they were just massacring fucking indigenous people not long beforehand, and it's like, this is mine now, okay. You guys were treating nature too well. We now build structures and we don't associate with nature and probably psychedelics and things like that and living off the land. And they just fucking plot their shit down. But you would buy the land back in the day and it would probably be fairly cheap for some people moving to this new land and how they sold property. They want to get as many settlers as they could get in. I just feel like they would have a plot of land. That's what I thought they were. Like, just like I bought this huge land. Now we're out in the woods and it's only us here because we left everything behind. And now I'm scared.
Also, before the talk goes out of my mind, the dad, looking back on it, I'm like, and I really like his character. I like the guy who plays him. I think it all worked perfectly, and I think it was probably meant to make you because I think a lot of the movie was made to maybe divide the audience, so you had like
Yeah.
maybe one feeling or another. I couldn't help the more I thought about the movie, I was like, fuck me, he's such a bitch. I was like, he's such like a, he kind of he lets Thomasin take the blame for shit. He the crops are all fucked up, this and that, and he's still kind of like denying what's actually going on. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
guess it's a sign of the times as well. I think it kind of shows, like you said earlier, about like men kind of having the power to be like, shut up, bitch. It's
Yeah.
this, and like everybody just had to just accept it. Which is like really that's my trailer talk gone for anyone who's wondering what happened there. Tom just treated me to a picture of Snape burning Hermione at the stake, is it?
Yeah.
And he's wearing a top hat.
Okay, I was just thinking about like women and stuff like that. No, I don't. Fucking sorry to surprise you with that. I know what you're saying though about the dad. His character is like genuinely. He's kind of like blaming everyone for everything else. But and then at one point while I'm watching the film, when they're like, you gave away or you sold and I didn't understand what the fuck they were talking about.
The
Even
silver
Chelsea was
cup.
like, what? The silver cup. So essentially he's poor and he's down on his luck and he can't produce any crops because the land is cursed.
Yeah, so it was like it was the wife's family's silver cup or something that she had,
Yeah.
and he had taken it and he had traded it for something.
Yeah, it
I don't
just
know
seems
what.
like there was a lot of I like that was hard to carry. I do like this film a lot, but that whole like, well, so he's in the way they spoke obviously is like old English, and they are like accusing each other of stuff. The mom also is. It's weird that they have characters that the mom starts to fucking annoy me too. At one point where I'm like, and I want to start getting into some of the crazier shit, but that's like so. And then so the mom was also fucking weird in the way her characters, because also like the twins, there's something about her that I was like, like it, you feel for her, but then don't. The way he did this movie and the motions that it like plucks at, so to speak,
Yeah,
is weird.
I was, as I was watching it, I was like trying to put myself in a position of a dad, and I was like, you know what I'd do in this position? I would take that axe and I would kill both those kids. I would
Yeah,
kill the wife. I was like, those are just really, really annoying. So I would kill them immediately.
kids and the wife, and then so you're left with Thomasin.
And Caleb.
Oh yeah, because that story's fucked too. That
So
oh my god.
like there's another, and like it was one of those things where I was like looking at it, there's a part where she's washing her again, like just there's so many like little bizarre things, and I know it's a sign of the times.
Yeah.
Where the towards the start of the movie the dad trips and falls into like fucking cow shit
Poo-poo.
or
And the
fucking
twins are just fucking laughing at him.
yeah, and then they like say say to him about the mother says like, Thomasin, get your dad's clothes off, or whatever way she fucking
Oh,
says it.
there's like a
How
I
white.
sprinkled the pedophilia in there.
Yeah, but like he's standing there with with his arms out like this while she's undressing him, and I'm like, what is going on? And then
Chelsea
like
said that same thing actually.
it's like 5
She's like,
minutes
what?
later, she's at the creek and she's like washing the shirt, and then Caleb comes and he's like trying to look at her tits and stuff. You're like, what is going on?
Okay, think about this, right? Because you can analyze this film in so many different ways and the emotions that it brings. Because you're thinking about how we existed. I even watching. I said after, like me and Chelsea watched it, I've dosed and stuff. I'm like, it's a wonder how we survived all this shit as humans, like the Black Plague, the stuff of like just you're not even washing your hands, so the doctors are killing more women and children than they think, because essentially back in the day they didn't wash their hands, and when they would go from cutting open a corpse to delivering a baby, and then it started that all the babies would die, and then women would die. Like, what's happening? And then they fucking realized to wash their hands. But like, how do we exist as beings, right? That like, and then you think back then where like you didn't have any of those learning lessons that we do nowadays, where you like, if you grew up and you only have this specific woman to look at, like, you know what I mean? That you're going to have feelings. And that's where like some of that shit with incest comes from in certain cultures, because they don't have anyone else outside of their circle. Like, especially in like think about African tribes and stuff like that, where maybe it's just like they don't have touch with with humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
going down the
like,
right road with this? Like, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, no, and as I watched it, I was like, I don't blame the kid. Like, I can, I can, I can remember being like, what age would you say Caleb is in this?
To me, it's like 12, 13,
Yeah, like
maybe
12, 13.
14,
So
maybe.
I can remember being that age in like modern times and being like
Yeah.
hormone, like fucking, just like,
What?
yeah, like a
Titties.
walking, yeah, like a walking hormone where like, you would fucking anything would, as Gordo says, literally anything would make the white stuff come out.
I don't like every time he says that, I'm like, the white stuff come out. I was like, do you have to say it like that?
Oh yeah, he does that on purpose as well. I think because so many people find it so grim. But if I'm thinking if I felt like that,
Who
you know,
else do you have around?
yeah, if I felt like that in modern times, now go back to 1630 and be like, yeah, I'd probably be fucking my mother and everything,
Yeah,
whatever.
because you don't have like anything else to associate it with, right?
Yeah,
Essentially, and that's where they get some of these like weird 80s movies from that they used to film, and like this weird thing of like as our culture, because you have ideas of the queen doing this, right, to keep money with inside the family, but this existed. So back then, I couldn't imagine some of the settlers were probably fucking each other's because they're all family. Everyone's even us technically are all cousins. It's like thousands of years maybe in difference, but you know what I mean, that we all came from Africa, from essentially one or a handful of beings that were maybe genetically modified by aliens. But and then it's just like you don't know anything else to do. You have these emotions and primal instincts, and that's what this time era shows, of people being scared of stuff they don't understand.
So does that technically mean then that we all fuck our own cousins?
Most likely. That that what's the not Harry, William. His
Mhm.
wife is his 38th cousin, according to the research I've done, because they keep it with inside some sort of family, right? And you think about this time era of people just settling down. Essentially, like there's that Joe Rogan joke where they're like, they show up at whatever, like Arkansas. I always pick on Arkansas, but like essentially some sort of fucking place like that, like, or South Carolina, like this is good. And then they like just set down their shit and be like, we'll build a life here together. And it's like, I don't want to walk no more. And that's how it was, where you just, even where these people come from, right? Whatever town settlement, it was just like, here seems good. Like they didn't probably know as much as they thought about the surrounding. There's like, we have trees. That's all we need.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, it's true. That's actually kind of fucked up when you dig underneath that.
For sure.
Okay, so I
Talking
can't
about
even.
the baby disappearing.
Yeah, where we were last at in this. Yeah, so the young kid, is it Sam? Baby.
Samwise Ganji.
Is that am I right in saying that?
I think something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sam. Yeah,
So
that shit's disturbing too.
yeah, so the kid goes missing, right? And again, there's another part here that maybe I'm wrong. I feel like was not really portrayed that well. They didn't really explain that was the case. So in like that olden witch lore, when when witches would come and try to like kidnap babies, essentially they would always look for a male baby, and
Yeah,
they were looking for like the baby fat. When you see it like a newborn or a young
Yeah.
baby, and he looks like a little fucking chubby, like a little sumo wrestler. And they would and it had to be it had to be male, and they would basically kidnap these kids, bring them back to their lair or cave or wherever, but also they had to be on they couldn't be baptized yet, and they would take the fat from the child. They would kill the child, take the fat from the child, mix it in a pot with hemlock, nightshade, and wolfsbane and something else
I've heard that before too.
to make an ointment. Right now, this is
To keep
something I
themselves young. Is that what the fucking chick's doing?
know. Right? Wait, I had
yeah.
no idea about this. So, this whole idea. This whole idea of, I think we look at things like Hocus Pocus and you're like, oh yeah, witches get on their brooms and fly, or they get on a vacuum and fly.
I smell children. I
Yeah.
don't know why. Everything's fucking weird once you start doing psychedelics. You're like, that's weird, man. And then Marilyn Manson made his album after it.
So apparently, witches couldn't just fly. They couldn't just pick up a broom and fly. So they needed the baby fat to mix with all those other ingredients to make what was known as a flying ointment. And they would rub
and they would rub it on the fucking broom?
And then rub it on the broom.
And then it would cause their vaginas to freak out.
And that would help
That
them
sounds like it hurts.
fly. And apparently, Robert Eggers or Eggers or whatever way you pronounce his name, that was supposed to be like the vague reasoning for the kid being kidnapped.
That's crazy. He took it back to that, because I heard about that also. If like it's not really on a broom, it's like waxed up. And you think about this, right? You're killing something super innocent. You're doing something that's against all nature. I don't know how to describe that. You know what I mean? When people kill children and that thing happens within our society in ancient cultures, when it's like firstborn son, fuck you, and they toss him off a fucking cliff, or you battle and it's like both people will still die, but it's just to see what happens. We're gonna make you guys battle and then we're gonna sacrifice you both to the gods. That whole thing has existed for fucking centuries. So then the idea that you're doing something horrendous and then putting it towards some sort of demonic force, and if reality isn't as real as we think it is, they could just start levitating, and some sort of force or dark energy allows them to levitate. And the idea when the baby goes missing genuinely creeps me out, where you're like, the scene and how they do it, and that fucking, she's playing peekaboo. For some reason, she's super close to the woods, and then she like looks up and it's like gone.
Yeah, and it's not done in like a Blair Witch-esque way. It's done in, I can't even like, and it's crazy considering this was his debut movie. It really trailblazes the way. It's like he created his own style.
He did. It's so
yeah,
different.
I can't liken it to anything else. Like even
To
that
me,
scene
the
you're talking about.
slight style, slightly, I want to say, just a bit, reminds me of movies like Midsummer
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Hereditary, where it's like one of those movies that is a cinematic experience that you want to sit through once or twice, and it's unnerving, and you don't want to. It can't repeatedly watch it, but the way you watch it and when you watch it, it changes you. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
the
would definitely put
cinematic
that in the
experience.
category with them.
It's fucking weird.
And from there, then I guess that's the catalyst that kind of sends the entire movie into like this big downward spiral where
It gets so bad for everybody. I'm like, holy fuck! It's just like
the baby goes
slow a
missing.
bit, and then
Yeah, like this, and I guess essentially for a while everybody's kind of blaming each other, and we don't really know who's at fault or what's actually going on. Is there a witch? Is there not a witch? Is there something else? Are they just fucking crazy? Is there another reason that they are out there on their own and they're not with the colony?
that's what I was thinking the whole experience. And I remember this the first time I watched it. For the first most of the movie, I think until you see the witch subdue Caleb, I felt that I thought that they were just crazy. And the way that the atmosphere builds up until you see what we'll get into is like what's the goat's name again? I was like, I
Black
know
Phillip.
Black Phillip. When he starts appearing more and you have everyone like pointing fingers at each other. And it does start with like the twins and well, especially the female twin. And I was gonna say, just back to whoever these actresses and actors are, the two of them, it was so well done. Where you're like, how are you this childlike and annoying? And their outfits that they were in made them look like little like fairy people. In my opinion, maybe I'm some mushrooms, but it was weird the way it was done. How like in their outfits, it was chosen.
You know, I said
You know what I
this to
mean?
somebody else. I was like, every time I look at them, I'm like, is that a really old young person or a
I
really
know.
young old person? I was like, it's like unsettling. Also, on another side note, would you let that witch in the woods
He
subdue
sucks
you?
him off essentially. To me,
Yeah.
he like she subdues him. And that's what I was going to talk about when we were talking about earlier about the witches and this whole incarnation. That's what I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit of like witches being like grotesque and ugly kind of gets put into our social subconscious, right? Where sometimes, but there's been recent movies and recent things where they like make witches like fucking sexy essentially. It's like
Dude.
there's older films where it's scarier and then they slowly progress to making them like sexier and sexier.
Caleb, you know, when he meets that chick, for anyone who's looking at the video version, she's on screen right now. Caleb, when he sees her, obviously, you know, he's
He's never seen anyone else.
Yeah, he's been looking at his own sister's like non-existent cleavage for his entire life.
Yeah.
And now he sees this like big fat titted fucking
like good looking lady.
Yeah. So like he's like, I'm in the middle of a haunted woods. Who cares? This is the lottery. And I can't
He
blame
doesn't
him.
know
I
what's
mean,
going on either. I feel like
yeah,
his brother went missing. He's looking for his brother.
I don't blame him. I had a crush for a long time on fucking what's her name from Hocus Pocus.
Are you talking about Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Yeah, whichever is the blonde one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was talking about that. Oh my God. Last night I was like, you know what? In the first one, I find her semi attractive. In the new one, in the new trailer, bro, they all look fucked. Even my girlfriend was like,
very.
yeah, they look rough. Every single one of them. And there's a Necro line. I'm wearing all this fucking stupid merch anyway, where he says, when men get old, they blossom. When women get old, they start rotting. And he's the most vulgar rapper for people that don't know. It's like the most brutal rapper on earth, where men can do this too, but there is some women that just don't age well. And it's just like,
What
I don't
was
know
it?
what it is. Their adrenochrome ran out.
What was it? Somebody told me before. Men age like wine. Women age like milk.
Colonel. And I was going to talk about this idea, right, of the beautiful, sexy witch. We've done this in our pop culture now, right? Like women dress up like it, I'm sure, at bar crawl. But that's why it's always, and even Chelsea pointed this out, my fiance, she was like, why is it always naked old women? Why is that like it's an unnerving
Yeah.
thing? The movie, which I was thinking about, we could talk about one day, is The Visit. I think that's a
Yeah.
movie. That movie's
Um,
it makes old people scary, dude.
I
And
love that movie. So that genuinely scared the shit out of me.
me too. I was like, why it's naked old ladies literally unnerve my fiance. Me, I'm like, it creeps me out, but it's like, why is it always
Yeah, and straight away I had that vision of that scene in The Shining.
oh yeah, where she's in the bathtub and you think she's an attractive woman. And as a
Ugh.
kid watching that film, you're like, oh my God, tits, hot chick. And then it gets disturbing where you're like, one of those movies where you have to like pause and be like, okay, I can't let this go any further, or I'm not going to produce any sticky white stuff. It's going to say, you know what I mean? Like, or my mind's going to be shifted and I'm going to grow up fucking chicks with zombie masks on. You know what I mean?
Or 50-year-old meth head.
Yeah, yeah. It's like this is my kink now because it fucking fetishes form when you're a fucking kid. Like of things like people. I supposedly I've said this before. People that enjoy furries as an off tangent, they had some sort of sexual thing with their stuffed animal as a kid. It's like, see, it all fucking comes back.
Huh,
That's such an off thing for this, but
strange.
yeah, so all these things kind of stick with you, and if you fucking think about witches, but this idea, right? And they made them fucking sexy. But there's the naked woman, and it's specifically in the scene. So if you want to bring it to when they're kind of locking, there's now it's starting to get crazy, like because we talked about Caleb and what happens to Caleb. He fucking disappears as they go out into the forest, right?
Yeah, I'm after getting mixed up on my timeline here. So he comes across this witch. Again, like I seen people online talking about, oh, after everything that's gone on, how did he fall for that? And somebody was like, oh, she must have like put a spell on him or whatever. And
That's
I'm
what
like,
it seemed like, yeah.
and it's like, yeah, but even if she didn't, like, she's like, again, he's
Yeah.
looking at his sister's tits, and now he has this big titted, sexy witch. Like, what 12-year-old boy is gonna be like, oh no, 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 I'm good. And she's like beckoning him over.
I know, and to me, the scene of when he walks up and then sees her makeshift wooden creepy cabin, which I wish I had a picture of for the YouTube. But look at it, it's strange, right? And then you see her open the door and come out, and you don't know what to expect, and it's like what you would think a witch would do. Like a witch is supposed to be in this lore, at least, and some of it is stay young. And that scene of just like he's walking through the woods, there's nothing around. It's just like it's creepy. And I thought about this while I was watching it outside of the fact that there's settlements around these areas and you don't know who the fuck is in the woods that you live beside because everything is fairly new. There could be indigenous people, there could be weirdos, who fucking knows who's within these woods that every different settlement and religion and people like that, people that are religious, like, you know what I mean? Like all these different things that you don't know who the fuck is in these woods, and then he stumbles upon the house, and that gave me chills.
Also, on a side note about that scene, the I'm not sure of his name. The actor that plays Caleb was like super nervous filming that scene. That was
Really?
his first ever kiss.
Oh shit.
So it's like I mean I think that's a pretty good claim to fame.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, he's probably quite a reserved kid. Like so he probably hasn't done any shit like crazy shit like us commoners would do at that
Yeah.
age. So like for him, I guess going back to his private school, it's probably a good like, oh yeah, I kissed that like big fat titted sexy.
Fucking chick from The Witch.
Yeah,
And that's pretty funny that I didn't know that it was his first kiss ever, and then he had to do it on a film.
yeah, with a grown woman.
Well, and it's just like the movie calls for it because at that time, and I've discussed about that before, right? Is like we only live to a certain age. Some people will die in their 40s or 50s.
Mhm.
So there was people like getting married, like 30-year-old men to like 16-year-old brides. Still happens in the world, but like back then they didn't really know any better, and it was who was the most fertile. And that this movie kind of reeks of that like time error. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and so Caleb gets taken or whatever by this
Yeah.
witch, and then that night, I think there's a storm, and Thomasin finds him outside of their house
Oh, that shit's
or
fucking.
whatever. Yeah, this for me, like the whole thing was just like fucked up from this point. I was like, okay, this is taking like a real turn now all of a sudden. Um, so I think after that we cut forward to I think it's the next day, and
When he's sick.
that's when yeah the kids are like dancing around with Black Phillip and they're like singing songs and just being like annoying. Um, um, then Thomasin I think goes to milk the goat and like blood comes out of it.
And she's freaking out because they're also right. She threatens, as we kind of said earlier, her like her younger sister, and or is it? And she like and tells her that she's like a witch. She's like, I be the witch of the woods, and she does this whole spiel, to scare the shit out of her sister because they're just annoying pests essentially, and they're out there all by themselves, and you have these annoying dancing, fucking children in large outfits that make them look fucking bizarre. And you know what I mean? And then she's like, she freaks her out. So they're ever, it's, now they're starting to think it's witchcraft. There's superstition setting in.
Yeah. So at this point, then she attempts to milk the nanny goat. She only gets blood. Then Caleb wakes up and vomits up an entire apple with a bite taken out of it.
How did
Uh,
you feel about that scene?
so that whole scene, and I have to um let me get that little guy's name. I need to find his name
The
because
actor?
he yeah, because he was fucking fantastic.
Oh, that whole scene, like that's good acting because you see
Yeah,
him go through
like
like pain and screaming, and then as he's like literally in ecstasy, it seems like where he's like oh
it's
take me and all with all that shenanigans he's fucking yelling. But
yeah, it's like uh freaky man. Like he goes through and how he's able to do that. The actor's name is Harvey Scrimshaw. Weird name.
Scrimshaw.
Um, how he was able to do that, I have no idea. The range of emotions that he goes through there, and you're right, it like it goes from like being like you feel sorry for him to like going, oh wait, shit, is he like possessed? Is he the devil? Is he somehow a witch or a warlock?
Yeah.
Then it goes from that to like it looks like he's having an orgasm, and you're like,
No, it
what
is.
the fuck
Yeah.
is going on?
That especially outside that scene made me like visibly uncomfortable. Where I was like, I don't like this. This is weird. And he goes through all these fucked up emotions as he's like going through. And to me, this is the part of the film where I'm like, is there not a witch? And he's going through a fever, and there's a sickness coming through, like the whole theory of ergot poisoning from the wheat being bad. And is he like hallucinating and dying from some sort of thing that they've ingested or taken in these woods? You know what I mean? At that point in the film, I was like, like, is it actually saying he sees a witch, but like, is it in his mind maybe? Like, and that's until the ending where I'm like, it solidifies it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm kind of I'm kind of pissed off that I didn't actually pull a little bit of that audio from that scene, because it's like, I don't think we could sit here for 2 hours and just talk about that scene. I don't think we'd do it justice. It's
Yeah.
genuinely like terrifying, and not in like a weird like paranormal activity jump scare kind of like, ooh, spooky witch doctor. Like
I'll
it's
add it in, see if I can add it in
yeah, it's
afterwards in
like
post.
so fucked. It's like unbelievable. Like I was genuinely like sitting there,
Uncomfortable, right?
what the fuck? I was like, what is going on? It one of the best uh I don't know if you could call it a possession scene
Yeah.
that I think I've ever seen. I mean,
Yeah, I would say so.
I'm sure people will think of things, like The Last Exorcism and The Exorcist and all these different movies, but I'm gonna go on record and say that this could potentially be the best performance
I
in
agree.
one of those scenes of all time.
I think that he does fairly like I actually think that is one of the best too, because it does make you uncomfortable. I think that was the purpose of it, where he goes through such an range of motions so quickly that you're like, and there's some part of the film when you're watching it that you're like, oh, like he's gonna survive this. It's just like a sickness, you know what I mean? And then he just dies after he's like in ecstasy. It seems like take me. And to me, it's not like I'm like trying to decipher if it's Jesus or like religion, the Lord that he's connected to. And then to me, you kind of realize that it's probably her and then possessing him to essentially drain his energy and maybe kill him.
Yeah. So from this point, then he, I suppose, what he proclaims his love for Christ, and then just
Kind of, it's weird.
yeah, and then just dies.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
the Jesus. It's I feel like that's why I'm saying it seems like he was calling upon some religious deity.
um, so from there, then the dad starts to believe that Thomasin is a witch. He tells her that she'll be put on trial when they return to town, which seems like a weird remark, because it's like, well, I don't think you have any intention of returning to that colony.
And it to me
So
it seemed like, is it his fault that they're there? My whole
yeah,
idea was like,
yeah,
why is the witch after him? To me, it's other folklore that brings me to this conclusion. And movies like The Bell Witch, where it's like, was it something? Well, the movie and the whole experience that the Bell Witch was in our history, was it something he did to bring
yeah,
upon this curse?
yeah.
Maybe
Um,
Chelsea's like, maybe he fucked her. That's what
and,
Chelsea said, that maybe maybe he fucked the witch. And I was like, ah,
and I would agree with that. There's definitely something I think underlying there with him, and that's why, like I said earlier about like he seems like such a bitch of like
yeah,
his personality, and he seems like really shitty and kind of sneaky.
I can't do
Um,
anything.
he he so then Thomasin points out like all the shit that he's done wrong. Um, she starts to accuse the twins of like retaliating because of the trick she played on them. Um, she says that Black Phillip is essentially the devil.
Yes,
Um, so then the dad's like really pissed off, can't figure out who the culprit is, even though personally I think the entire thing is his fault. So he decides
yes,
to, as any man would do with his kids, is lock them all in the shed.
with the goat that they think is the devil.
Yeah, until further notice. Um,
Sort of
then there's like
it's like
some,
a
yeah,
tick
there's
clock.
like they have some dialogue while they're in the shed. Thomasin asks the twins, do they really talk to Black Phillip? They don't answer. And she overhears William, I think is the dad's name. She overhears him, I guess, confessing to God or whoever about like
Yeah, yeah.
it's his own fault. He was so stubborn. That's what got them out of the village. It wasn't anything to do with like his being devoted to his religion.
Do you remember what the mom's going through in this scene also?
Fucked.
That scene, okay, for everybody, if you like, people that are tuning in and that can not see some of the imagery that we're showing, is that scene where she is essentially hallucinating because of some sort of witchcraft. That's why part of me was like, is it the sickness from like ergot poisoning or some sort of thing that they ate, where she thinks she's in so much guilt and so much turmoil, she turns and sees Caleb with the baby Sam and talking to her. And then what do you remember what she does next?
That whole thing, right? And I had seen people talking about, I mentioned earlier about the witch's teeth thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people are like, oh, that's what it is. Other people say that no, it's just the ravens like tearing her tit off or whatever, like pecking her tit. Um, that again, I don't know, and it shouldn't probably because it's not actually like that grotesque or anything. But that whole like 2-3 minutes of that scene, like really fucking made me uncomfortable.
Me too. Where like you start to at first because I haven't seen this in a while. You're kind of like weird. Like in Chelsea's even like because I watched it with my fiance. It's like she's like what? Like she's hallucinating. Like she's not seeing this stuff. And then I forgot about that scene. It's funny where it kind of like just turns to her and she's wanting to essentially take the baby and nourish it by using her tit. And then it cuts to the scene where you see what's really going on is she's holding nothing and a fucking crow or some sort of raven is fucking pecking and ripping apart her nipple. And then that can like it's such a disturbing scene. And then when it comes to the next day where she's just like laying on her side, like she took too many fucking psychedelics or some sort of bad drug and is just like, whoa, like what happened last night? Like that scene of her just like laying there afterwards. I'm like, because part of me during that scene was like, she's going to die. This is where she dies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And just the expressions on her face in that
She's
as well. Like,
laughing.
yeah, she's like laugh because I was looking at it, I was like, is that like a laugh? Is it a cry? I was like, that shit's gonna like haunt me. I'm gonna have nightmares about that.
Yes.
That's one of those things that like just the flash of that image of her
Yeah.
sticks in my mind where I'm like, that is such a fucked up visual.
To me, it's the same way that Hereditary when the chick's head gets lopped off while they're driving, that same sort of feeling where it's just a cut scene and then you're like, holy fuck. Like and then it shows something super graphic and disturbing and then cuts to something else after. Like you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like especially
yeah,
like Hereditary did it more like a little different, but this and how it doesn't show what happens later. It just shows her on her side, woke up like, oh shit, what did I do last night?
yeah. So from this point,
Yeah.
let me see where are we
You
at.
want to talk about the
So
shed scene or they're like it locked in the fucking weird shed thing?
yeah, so where let me see. Um, so we've talked about the raven pecking her taste,
Yeah, that
all
shit's
that stuff.
fucked.
So then right after there, what happens?
Don't they're locked in the shed and the twins are like, they're just chilling and then all of a sudden, or weren't they like laying there and they're talking and be like, do you be a witch? And they're like, no. And then they're like, I'm not a witch either. Like Thomasin tells them like, hey, like, are you into like, are you part of this? Are you actually the witches? Because everyone's pointing fingers at each other. Nobody knows who's doing what. The fact that the younger fucking twin, the female, she says that she sees the witch outside of the woods earlier, like that she talks to
Yeah,
her.
yeah,
So
yeah,
then Thomasin is like the movie very much comes from her point of view of more or less being the more sane person that's kind of outcasted and she's essentially if the mom dies she has to be the female figure in the family, like if there's disease all the, you know what I mean.
yeah. And you know what's really interesting actually about you saying that, about essentially the entire thing has been shown from her point of view. The original, the original structure when he first wrote the movie was broken into 5 acts, and each act was going to be told from the perspective of a different family member.
That would have been interesting. There's that movie that came out, the night something, the green. I mean, it's told from all these different perspectives. It's this movie in medieval times with who plays fucking that guy from Star Wars with the fucking red lightsaber, the new one, Kylo Ren.
Mhm.
What the fuck's his name?
Um,
I actually like him a lot. Adam Driver. So
yes.
you know what film I'm talking about? It's like Adam Driver, Matt Damon, and Ben Affleck are in it. I don't know if you saw this, but essentially it tells it from 3 different points of views, and it's not that great. Yeah, I
It's only
disappointed.
a recent enough movie.
Yeah, it's super. It was super new. Look at Adam Driver, you'll see it. It's like and he's kind of an asshole in the film, but it shows it through all these 3 different people's perspectives of how this chick got essentially fucking raped, and it was a strange film, and everyone praises it. The ending was the best part, and it's
The,
like
the Last Jewel.
Last Duel. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching at least once. You'll see why I'm saying that. It's like you can't always tell it from 3 different perspectives. And I'm glad of what he did, because I don't know if it would have been too much for the film to tell it from all these different perspectives.
Yeah, I think
Because
that's
you
what
get
the studio
one
said
version.
to him as well.
Yeah. You get one version essentially of how she's seeing what's happening. And you more or less, because I said to Chelsea, I've listened to that book, The Law of One, and I've listened to a lot of David Wilcock's books and read them. And he talks about how there's always in movies, there's the arc, right? Where it's just like, there has to be a climax. There has to be essentially like you build up a character, which the audience resonates with. The hero's journey is what this is called. And it's within all cinema, essentially, that if you
Mhm.
understand it, that it's within every single movie. This one fucking strays away from that a little bit, where you're like, everyone's gonna die. It's just like going down this direction, and like it's just going like horribly bad. Where I'm like, there is no hero's journey until you kind of realize the end, where you're like, maybe the witches are the good guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
The way the story arc of this film is strange.
So from that point, then the dad William wakes up. He finds the goat house destroyed. All the goats are all like fucked up.
I guess that's what it is.
The twins are missing, and then Thomasin is like unconscious. I think she's like covered in blood.
Yeah.
She wakes up, and I think they have a small bit of dialogue, and then Black Phillip comes out of nowhere and gores the dad.
It is, that scene is also crazy, where like the dad's talking to her and like where is everybody? The twins disappear, and then she's like, I can't explain it, kind of thing. She's like, she can't, when she says the line, she came from the sky. That's where I was like, that gave me chills. Like that idea that like a witch comes in out of nowhere in those times, especially with the idea that they truly believed in a demonic force, which I think does exist to some extent, but like it's this idea, and then Black Phillip essentially retaliates in some weird way of all this negative energy, and fucking gives the dad some sort of karma, you could say, and fucking pins him. And it's just like it's super disturbing. It's a bad scene. Like that scene, like bad in the way it makes you feel.
Yeah. And then from there, the mother, what's her name? Catherine, is it? Catherine, something like that.
She's covered in rubble.
Yeah, she appears from nowhere and basically accuses Thomasin of causing the entire thing, and it says that she seduced the dad and Caleb, and that's what she was always doing, and goes to attack her.
You're the witch. Yeah, it's all you, and she freaks out. Every scene in this movie, I think, is very well done in the emotion that it invokes.
And Thomasin proceeds to kill her with what do they call it?
Sickle? Is it like isn't that?
Yeah, it's like a sickle or a bill hook, something like that. Yeah, so she kills her in self-defense, I suppose.
That's what I thought. When me and my girlfriend were watching, we were like, okay, so she has something in her hand. She already hit you once. Okay. And you're so focused on choking Thomasin to death, her own child, that you don't realize that she can just hit you again. And she gets to the point where she's choking her, that Thomasin essentially has no other reaction but to retaliate because you're gonna die. You have that fight or flight instinct from your reptilian core of your brain, and then you just fucking hit. And that scene's fucked too, because that's at the moment where you realize the twins are gone, her dad's dead, and you just killed your own mother.
It's so like it's when you hear someone talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, I just feel like you can't do it 100% justice. You really need to see it to actually like, because I think everyone will have their own maybe little version of how they interpret everything. I don't think everybody will see the movie exactly the same way. There's going to be something at some point that you might feel, well,
That
no,
somebody else doesn't feel.
yeah.
Perspective is everything, man.
And I'm going to read this bit. I copy and pasted this exactly from the plot breakdown because I feel like it tells the last little bit really well, and again just adds to like how like bizarre and out there this whole thing is. So now alone, Thomasin hears chiming and enters the stable, where she urges Black Phillip to speak to her. The goat responds in a human voice, asking if she would like to live deliciously in a life of luxury, and then materializes into a tall, black-clad man. He tells Thomasin to remove her clothes and sign her name in a book that appears before her. Thomasin then follows Black Phillip into the forest nude, where she joins a coven holding a witch's sabbath around a bonfire. The witches begin to levitate, and Thomasin joins them, laughing maniacally and ascending above the trees with her newfound sense of belonging. Which again, that there for some reason, and I don't know why, because it's not really. That made me like that gave me chills.
That whole scene, we're showing a clip of when everyone starts lifting into the air. Now that whole scene, even my girlfriend was like, I don't want to know what the fuck Chelsea's like, there's something behind her, because it doesn't show anything. Okay. It doesn't show you what the goat turns into. It doesn't really, it just shows shadows and kind of footsteps, and you just kind of see legs, which more or less to me seem like goat hood legs, like the iconic Baphomet devil, right? That whole the whole imagination sparks. And like, I love films, and my grandfather was very into horror but hated the slasher films. Okay, but he liked those old films. He's like telling me to watch, the original House on the Haunted Hill, and he liked Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, where it kind of left your mind to the imagination. Yeah. There were certain older films. Psycho kind of does it, but it's these films that like kind of allow you to think, in these psychological thrillers is how they were done. It leaves everything up to the imagination. And when we had the speaker behind us, okay, I hook it up to the projector to a big speaker that I have, and then he's like, and you hear the goat start whispering and talking to her, like, would you like to live outside of this? And in talking to her, it creeped the shit out of me. It left me, I'm saying this movie left me in so many ideas in the thoughts that I had. I was going to say, I looked up this chick after. Do you find Thomasin, the actor, Anna Taylor, some fucking shit? I think she's fairly attractive. When I looked her up, I was like, oh, wow. She's like an attractive chick, and she does a lot of other movies that I didn't know that she was in. And I'm like, oh, she's in this and that. And I was like, weird.
Yeah, no, she is.
Anna Taylor something. What's her name?
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah. She's in other stuff where I'm like, and that's why if you see and you look up her IBMD, is that how you say it? Fucking whether she is, you see that she might be associated with a Nosferatu film.
Ooh.
So, and that scene, to like, as we're talking about, that's the scene where it changes the entire experience of the film, where like, and then obviously I'm feeling weird things because I find her attractive, and then she gets naked and you can kind of just see the glimmer of her ass, and you're like, and that idea of like this chick is for men, females, you don't really may understand if you don't feel these things, but like this idea of a woman just being naked walking into the woods, where it's like you're open and more free. Like, I've always joked that if I was really as comfortable, if I was more fit, maybe I would be a nudist. I'd go to a nudist colony. It wouldn't bother me that much, especially because I do psychedelic and stuff where I'm like, if everyone was just cool with each other, and then it's just the human body. So that experience of her just walking into, and that feeling, right, of exposing yourself to all the elements. And that's what I like. Witchcraft at its core is essentially like becoming one with nature in some dark capacity, because that's what the whole folklore around witches is. And back when I actually finished high school, went back to school to finish because I was working and other things, I talked to this girl, and she was older than me, trying to finish up school in her 30s, and she is a Wiccan, a New Age witch, and she said that she goes to the parties in Ottawa, parties so to speak, but the Sabbath, Black Sabbath, where literally they dance around the forest naked. A bunch of people that believe in this stuff, and they still use it to this day.
I mean, I would do it. I'd probably sign that fucking book if Thomasin was on the other side of that.
And I've said this before to Chelsea, right? So my idea of how that exists, right, is, to me, celebrities do this. I believe you can sell your soul. So, and this is what these witches are doing, is they're coming into the woods, right? And they're doing these all sorts of witchcraft to gain them something in this physical existence, right? I believe this shit about like why Beyonce is associated with the Illuminati and these celebrities that sell their soul for fame and fortune. Here, you get all of that, right? But in the next reality, you'll have to experience something horrible to essentially cleanse your karma. That's how I see it. Do you know what I mean? Does that sound?
That's a scary thought for all those people.
I know, because you're here you physically sell your soul to, because everyone says like this person sold their soul to the devil. That idea of that, what's his name, Robert Johnson, that played that riff and got the devil to possess him to become this amazing guitar player. And they're at the crossroads, and that idea that essentially here in this physical world, you sell yourself. That's what I believe witchcraft could be, to this demonic power. If you sign your soul to the devil or sign your thing in the book. And even at the ending of watching it, Chelsea was like, we're talking about ghosts. She was like looking at me all strange. She's like, you're going to have to sign the book tonight. Because I was like, she knew I was visibly freaked out more than her. And she's like, I didn't find it that freaky. I was like, well, eat a gram and then tell me what you think.
I don't think I would have been able for that, to be honest. If I had the reaction I did while sober, I can't imagine what it would have been like.
Well, in this end of the film, right? Like, I want to hear more of your thoughts about, like, because the end of the film is, to me, the best part, where you're starting to realize, like, hey, who's these? And then makes you think, though. It leaves you thinking, who are these other women that come into the shot? And then you see Black Phillip standing there, and essentially he's supposed to represent the devil, and they all, like, and then she is naked, and everyone's naked in this Black Sabbath. And then she starts to realize, right, that she's now part of this. She signed the book, and the way they filmed her fucking face and the way her face changes, especially when I was watching Outside Mushrooms, is the way he filmed it was incredible, because it shows this demonic looking face, and how you see her face is like ecstasy and in all enjoyment of what every pleasure sense is going off in her brain, essentially, in the way and you see her lifting. I want to hear more of what you think about that scene, because that shit like stayed with me.
Yeah, and to before I get into that, there's something I wanted to touch on that I've seen a lot of people talking about throughout the movie. This idea of, was she part of this for the entire movie? Some people reckon that she was. It wasn't just there that she finally submitted or whatever. But I can't help but feel that, she seems innocent in many of the things that she's accused of.
Yes, for sure.
By her family throughout the movie. But I think you could argue that, like, her constantly being hounded like that and kind of pushed to that degree is what eventually caused her to turn to the dark arts in a way. And I think it kind of harkens back to, like, I loosely researched some, I guess, real life stories, and it seemed to be a similar thing. Like you said, it was very easy to just be like, yeah, she's a witch. And there is actually a lot of cases of women being accused of being a witch or whatever, that eventually had, like, I don't know whether it's some sort of like a psychotic breakdown or whatever, and basically just went, yeah, I'm a witch. And
see, like, and eventually you just submit, because, like, okay, it's like those tortures, right? Where they torture prisoners and people to be like, are you a part of Al Qaeda? And then
Yeah.
just keep doing it. And eventually, like, how do I get myself out of this? Your brain reverts to like, I need to say whatever they want me to say. This is a good way to talk about it. Okay. Brandon Dassey. Okay. In that famous
Yep.
Making a Murder, because essentially they just co-opted him. That's a word I use to say these things because he was someone who was not of a high intellect. And the courses I did when I was a kid, where they were like, you just need to admit everything. And I was just spewing on as a kid to the cops when I was like 15. You can't do that shit. You have to make sure a lawyer. My mom was pissed because she's like, shouldn't there be a parent there or something? Because I was just like, oh yeah, I did this. I'm sorry. Da, da, da. And it's just like, they don't tell you need a cop around. So like, essentially you're just like putting people in this box and eventually they're going to say something just to satisfy this bullshit. And that's why I thought that same thing where it's like, you pushed her to this. She has nothing left.
Yeah. Essentially.
Just like, did the witch do that?
Yeah. Like if you look at it from that point of view, like, okay, her decision to sign the Devil's Book, I think it makes a lot of sense. She spent her entire life, I'm assuming, being made to like devote herself to God and her faith blindly without any real like, other than her parents probably being like, this is what we do. She has no real reason to follow.
No, and I've had that thing. Like, I was never religious, right? I went to church a couple times. Hated fucking the Sunday bullshit they made kids do. What's it called? Sunday class or whatever. And I've said this many times. Where like I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. The church that we were at started talking about how gay people are bad, and I have a gay uncle. And I was like, all right. Like my mom was like, all right, we're leaving. And I never took anything from that. I was always kind of spiritual. My grandma was the one that gave me my first Ouija board. But there was something that about religion where I'm like, this sums off here. You have good intentions, but
yeah, it's and I think if we're talking specifically about Thomasin and these people, she follows this faith blindly. I'm assuming at the instruction of her parents or whatever. It's just like the done thing. That's what they do. And what does she get rewarded with? She gets cast from the colony, or her dad fucks that up for her. Then her entire family turn against her, and essentially create the thing that they fear the most. They become that, I guess, fearful of like Satan and curses and witches. It was so deeply instilled in their faith that it actually caused them to abandon any rational thought. They turn on Thomasin and basically turn her into the thing they fear the most.
And it's funny to bring it full circle, because essentially that's why I said what you fear, you bring near. So the fact that like, and say this was based on the movie is based on a bunch of different stories, and the director specifically went very deep into this lore and probably made one of the most disturbing yet greatest iconic witch films that I think will ever exist, in the time and the feeling of that place of being, you're not in like, it's people from Ireland, Scotland, Britain, we're all ascending here towards Canada and North America. And you had left your old life behind to hopefully have a better life after bloodshed of millions of fucking indigenous people, right? So you don't really even like, I hope this is right. Like, I hope this is correct in that religious feel. You know what I mean? Where like everyone is scared and everyone is in fear. And then you're going to essentially, if something you don't understand, like people thinking differently in a very time of strict religion, then you start to point the finger at them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think out of all those cases that there was, I suppose, inspiration taken from, I think the one, I'm not sure, I've sent it to you there. I don't know how to pronounce that. Zugara Murdy.
Zugata Murray, sure. Yeah, I can't pronounce shit on this podcast. That's why I'm so cringy. But
so it was the Zugara Murdy witch burning process, which was in 1610, I think, in the Spanish Inquisition, is actually what majority of it is based on. That was like sometime before Salem, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I would like to talk about this on another episode for sure. Like it'll eventually come on Strange Brew Podcast. Now that I consider you one of the co-hosts, is that I want to talk more about like the idea of witches more than we'll do even here, and the history of it specifically, because a lot of the burnings come from a time back in like France and earlier times, and it came from European culture where mostly we were not burning people, we were hanging them. Most times we're hanging them. Like I would be curious if some witches had the guillotine, but to me what I've read and understood is that most times, in at least North America and where I am, they would hang them. Or like and I know that existed, and it's not as much as people think it is, where they drown them too. They put them in a chair and tie them to the chair, and they push them in the water, be like, all right, if you surface, you're a witch. If you die, we know you're not a witch.
Cool, great deal. Thanks.
It's like, you know what I mean? Do you know, like, you know where I'm going with this thought is like,
Yeah.
it wasn't as prevalent, this witch burning thing that we have in our culture of what people associate with witches, as actually people think it was.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's just something like that, I suppose, seemed as like the most commercial, like crazy looking image
Yeah.
would be being tied to a stake and being burned alive. The Satanic Temple actually endorsed this film, and their spokesperson was noted as saying it's an impressive presentation of satanic insight that will inform contemporary discussion of religious experience.
That's funny. You're talking about the milky eyed dude that runs the Satanic Temple now. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, what's his name again?
Like and to me at the beginning of this podcast, because what I was into, I had the Satanic Bible. I have it somewhere beside me. I read in the Satanic Bible, and I would talk about, and Anton's like, you said it on the episode that you were a Satanist, because now I say I don't subscribe to anything, and I never really have. Well, I thought it was edgy at a time where I was learning about, back in the day, a couple of years ago, learning about Satanism is essentially like, to me, at least Anton LaVey's Satanism is just based on, okay, you're a god in your own right, which I've thought beforehand. Before I ever got in the Satanic Bible, there's this guy named George Calavisius, this UFO contactee from Australia. Can't find anything about him anymore. No, I've never seen any more of his videos. Watched it a lot when I was a kid. He like disappeared, and he used to have supposed to be contact with the Andromeda Council. I was super into this shit when I was a teenager, and he said that we're all gods in our own right. He had these talks, and that he's like, we're all connected to whatever God is, we are also a part of. So it means we're all gods here in this existence because we're connected to some higher reality or higher self. So, and then hearing about all this stuff with like the witchcraft and the burning, and the idea of that, that you can be influenced on different levels of reality, right? You know what I mean? And that say, like in Anton LaVey's version is essentially that you just, okay, you hold, who cares really? There's no afterlife, essentially, in some views of how we put it, but essentially that you're just here to experience this and move on. And that's what I took from it. That's not bad, because I do believe there's different sects of Satanism. You know what I mean? There's different sections. Some kill children, in my opinion, that I believe that did exist and may still. And there's one where it's, you know what I mean? It's one where it's just like, oh, I just don't like religion. It's against the religion.
Yeah, I will say, like, unfortunately, that dude that you were talking about, his name is Lucian Greaves.
Yes. He doesn't run anymore, does he?
He unfortunately, I think by just his look alone, probably he gave a lot of cannon fodder to like media and stuff, because I think it was really easy to put like a photograph of him and be like, Satanic Temple man kills kids and stuff, and like you would look at that and he has like the fucking weird milky eye and stuff, and you're like, ugh.
I think that same thing where it's just like, and to me, whatever the Satanic Temple does and is behind all of this stuff, because who knows who's orchestrating that sort of organization. they chose somebody, a figurehead, much like the queen, all these people we see in society, as someone who looked evil. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Because you think that he was just, to me, it's like, did you actually create this because you felt like an outcast, because you looked different and people thought you were scary? So you developed your own section of Satanism, or at least carried on other people's traditions to do with that belief in folklore, you could even say. And then it's just like, or did somebody put him in that position because of what he looked like? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm just reading here. He had said in an interview about how the idea for the whole Satanic Temple was conceived. Um, he said they envisioned it as a poison pill in the church-state debate. The idea was that Satanists asserting their rights and privileges where religious agendas have been successful in imposing themselves upon public affairs could serve as a reminder that such privileges are for everybody and can be used to serve an agenda beyond the current narrow understanding of what the religious agenda actually is.
That's very much what I kind of like. You know what I mean? Like I get
Mhm.
what I get where he's coming from when it comes to that stuff. And like I said, I don't subscribe to any belief, but some part of me is like, yeah, I get that. You know, they're not bad people. I love fucking wearing black, man. I used to wear fucking eyeliner when I was a 14-year-old kid and wear nothing but black and cut off black gloves. Like I was super emo. I like the darkness, man. I'm into morbid, weird shit. So I get it. So you can see why they would pick this film, because of how it does show the religious
Yeah.
influence on certain things to do with what we don't understand, like witchcraft and the belief in a devil.
Yeah, and I think, it harkens into, he went on record at one point and said that Satanism, they don't worship Satan. The temple of the Satanic Temple don't follow Satan. That it's based on personal sovereignty, independence, freedom of will, stuff like that. And I think,
They chose the same way fucking Anton LaVey did. They just chose a name that was edgy.
yeah, yeah, essentially. I mean, like I said, for newspapers and magazines and shit, it was a really easy target to be like, Satanic Temple leader, and it's like this dude with fucking milky eyes. It's like, I mean, it really is like, it's such an easy target. Like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Like, it's
I feel like I should have brought his fucking just for here. Just for everybody. Fucking give me a sec. As we're talking about this though, we're bringing this to the close. What the fuck's his name? Fucking
Lucian, so Lucien Greaves.
is
He's a weird looking dude.
but yeah, fucking. Even watching, like, that did you watch the doc Hail Satan with the question
Yeah.
mark?
Yeah.
I liked it because it's just pointing out a different point of view. And the thing is, nowadays, everyone wants to be accepted, right? We have this whole community when it comes to LGBTQ plus, whatever, like, let's include everybody, right? Where it's just like, you have to eventually, like, I see somewhat of them destroying religion and the fundamental morals of religion, which are good in some ways. But I also see it where it's just like, if you want to be inclusive, you gotta let this motherfucker come into play, because you know what? Like, yeah, he's a freaky looking dude. I don't know why I didn't save it in HD, but
That
and
nearly makes it worse.
I don't know if I'm just bantering on, but essentially, like, I wanted to just like kind of like we could end it slowly talking about like, this idea of Satan that we see in our culture, right? I would like to, we've had talks where I want to start at like the Hellfire Club and then go forward, then talk about Anton LaVey. And me and Anton always talked about it would be called our Hell series, which if you're interested, we could all three of us do it and it would be long, but essentially it's going to be like 4 episodes. Talk about like hell essentially in the paintings and everything that's associated in our culture way back in the day, to then maybe the Hellfire Club next, and then Anton LaVey's Satanism, and then now what Satanism is today.
I would love to do that. I think it's a fascinating topic. I know a lot of people say, oh, it's been covered a lot. I actually, I don't know if it has though. I
No.
still, yeah, I still feel like that, yes, it has been covered. Yes, people put it as the title of their podcast episodes or YouTube
Yeah.
channels and stuff like that. But I still don't think there's been like a proper deep dive into what is actually behind some of it and what some of it means.
And to me, because I feel like the way we do things is a lot different than other podcasts, and with the use of even me being experienced in psychedelics, and you and Anton, as even Anton's died more into the stuff than I have in his youth, like LSD and stuff like that, which I eventually want to try once and see how that makes me feel, because psychedelics are interesting to me as learning from them. But like, it allows you in some way change the thought process where I see outside of things differently, where I feel like genuinely I'm giving a different perspective in a lot of the shows we do than some people would have, because I believe in some crazy shit, but I try to go on subjectively where I'm like, who fucking knows? But this is what I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I like about about doing these episodes with you. You don't just get the generic cookie cutter,
Yeah.
because in a lot of ways it's easy to do that. It's easy to say I'm interested in these things and I'm curious, and then just kind of have the same spiel as everybody else and just say the same shit. But when you actually dig, like, the one thing I respect about that as well is being able to say or admit things without any fear of like repercussion or whatever, in the sense of being like, yeah, I like to wear black, I like to listen to this, or I like to look at that, or I don't have an issue with this. I feel like I had an interview with I don't know if you've ever seen the slasher movie Cherry Falls.
I actually really like that film. Isn't that like
Yeah,
with a witch? Isn't that a witch
Brittany
kind of?
Murphy, Brittany Murphy is in it,
Oh, I'm thinking of Black Falls. Cherry
and
Falls. Is it good? I might actually check that
yeah,
out then.
it is, yeah. And it was directed by an Australian director called Jeffrey Wright, and I had a chance to interview him earlier today,
Oh,
and
that's sick.
he he kind of alluded back to that as well. He was like, this movie went, basically what happened was they released the movie, right? And he had like a super unrated version of the movie, and the end scene, what basically, just really quickly before we end this, so like the very loose plot of the movie was they tried to turn the whole slasher idea kind of on
I'm
its head a bit.
Yeah, I'm looking
That
at pictures. It has that Brittany Murphy, Michael Brian, Gabriel Mann. Oh, I know that one dude. Yeah. Okay. I haven't seen
um,
this.
so basically, how it works is the killer is killing virgins.
Oh,
So,
weird.
the way at the time, like it would have been in like a slasher movie, it was like, oh, if you have sex, you'll die.
Yeah.
In this one, they flip it the other way. So it's the
They're turning
virgins.
everything on its head,
Yeah.
essentially.
So basically, the end of the movie is this huge bloodbath of like, there's like 70 to 80 teenagers having a massive, like weird blood orgy thing. And yeah, so when they screened it and like the audience went wild, but the studio were like, nah, too dangerous, can't be releasing that kind of stuff. So they basically made them do another 4 cuts of the movie. And he said that the movie that got released, the only version of the movie that ever got released, and the one that, I will see, you will see if you watch it, is basically the airplane version. It's like the softest cut possible. And he was just talking about, I said, do you think we'll ever see the unrated? And he was like, the footage is somewhere, the material is out there, but it's been 20 years and nothing has surfaced. And he was just talking about how nowadays he was like, it would be next to impossible to even write that down on a piece of paper and put that in front of an executive. We're gonna have an 80-person blood orgy, but it's just a movie and it's just for fun.
Yeah, and I've never even seen it, which I'd be interested in the fact that like he's a director essentially. So right, is that what like he was right,
Mhm.
the director?
Yep.
So and somebody else wrote the script, right? So then the producers get a hold of it, and it's wherever the footage they own, because they technically own it now because they're producing it. So they would have it somewhere. And the thing is, but they let movies slide like Caligula and
Mm.
some of these like films from the past that's just like have like they're fucking the most inappropriate films, and And when it comes to cinema, it's just like sometimes you have to let those movies exist, because cinema picks at certain things in society and who we are in human nature, and serial killers and things like that are very real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's strange. We live in a really strange time, and I feel like not to get too off topic, but
Yeah, I
the
agree.
the whole pandemic thing and all has just kind of intensified all that.
Wait, have you noticed that there's no good comedies anymore? Part of it is this fucking woke culture shit. Comedies suck now and have sucked for almost like 10 years.
It's
Because
illegal to make a joke.
yeah, you can't, if you make a joke or say your beliefs, you get jailed for it in some places. Like we talked about, the Irish guy that got fucking jailed for not wanting to say somebody's pronouns. Like
Yep.
this idea of like, people are people, human beings are human beings. People go through all sorts of shit and experiences. Let them be people. But you can't censor people's opinions and thoughts, or that's not a free society anymore. Especially when it comes to cinema. If there's an audience, let them have it. Not everybody needs to watch it. Comedies specifically have bombed essentially because everyone's afraid. So Seth Rogen really doesn't make too many films anymore. Like everyone's afraid to say something that's going to offend somebody else, which is going to get them on the radar, which gets them canceled. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a sad time when it comes to cinema.
Yeah, and it's so weird. Like I bought a hat recently. It's just like a regular like dad hat, and it has an embroidery of a pentagram, and it just says "Go to hell." I just bought it. I like the design.
I'd probably wear that too.
Yeah, like, but I bought it. I like the design. There's no real like. I don't go out and stab babies and like rape women, but like the amount of people that like when I came back here, like I live in a quite conservative small town. The amount of people I see like looking at that and being like it's a fucking hat.
And that's why I'm saying people need to calm down. We're like, during even the pandemic, right? I wasn't wearing a mask. I was one of those people. I don't care what people think about that, but I was just someone that was like, hey, I've had enough of this. I wore it for a bit. This is bullshit. Started to research it. What is really going on? Follow the money, not the science, essentially. And people would look at me. I got called a scumbag for walking the wrong direction of the arrows in the fucking grocery store. And I don't care. I don't give a shit what people think about me. If you enjoy who I am, I appreciate you. And I'm here for love and to change the world in some form and talk about strange things. But I wear a fuck Trudeau shirt places I go. I have a fuck the New World Order shirt where people give me weird looks, but essentially nobody says shit to me because what are they going to say? I'm like, yo, you support fucking governments taking over your lives? Like nobody says things because at the deeper level, every normal thinking person to me that understands psychology and your brain and just someone that is kind of intellectual understands there is something wrong with censoring somebody that just thinks outside of the box of what the government and society has structured for you.
Yeah, and it's something that and I feel like maybe at some point we should do maybe just an off the cuff rant episode about this maybe sometime. But
you have to pay for that, people. Get the Patreon. Fuck.
It's something that like infuriates me to think about it. And I suppose to tie it back into this, while researching this movie, I did see it. It's a very divisive movie. Like for as many people say it's amazing, it's a great piece of art, it's a fantastic piece of work. There's also the other side.
Yeah, there always is.
Who are like, kind of, and I don't mean just shitting on it from a critic point of view, like a filmmaker point of view, but like a lot of people were bringing up the whole satanic thing and the witch thing, and they're like objectifying women and they're doing this and they're showing like stuff that doesn't need to be shown, and I'm like, come on, like
it's playing a time period of what it was like context about where we were as a society. We're like, especially when they're cancel certain people, let's cancel this Christmas song because it's about subduing a woman, stuff like that, where it's like, get the context of the time era and where we were as a society. Okay. We're now within a short span of time, we've gone too woke, where it's just like everything needs to be dissected. And the thing is, everyone can say what they want when it comes to this subject, but not this one. And that's where we are as society. And with films like this that literally toy at those emotions and ideas of who we were as human beings at a certain time period, and people are saying to like cancel it or get rid of it or don't show it, you will lose the value of life, in my opinion, and the sense of wonder. We will live in this autonomous existence where it's like 1984, where it's like you're always being watched. You're supposed to be like China. People can say what they want, but China I wouldn't want to live there. Oh, they eradicated poverty. Sure. Shut the fuck up. They lock people in their fucking houses for thinking that they're kind of sick. So that society, you want to live in that society where you can't go on the internet and search a certain thing, because even if it's something mundane is like how to change your mind or fix your depression or something like that, everything is censored. And I'm sorry for that rant, but like if we keep canceling things, that's what's going to happen.
Yep, it's fucked, and it'll remove everything. Like art won't get to be subjective in any form, whether that be film, music, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
If we go down that route, then we won't even get to have these conversations.
No. And we'll be listening to fucking house music constantly in a fucking club that just fucking be like, you ever played the game We Happy Few?
Mm-hmm.
It's a crazy game where they give you pills, these joy pills. Love that game. It's created by Canadians. If you don't know what it is, look it up. But essentially, you have to take your pill. When you stop taking your pill, you start to see how gloomy, and you have like withdrawals of like this. They make you just believe in this fake world, and everyone be happy and take your joy and take your pill. That's where society to me is going if people aren't careful. And without people, you could say like Joe Rogan, even though I feel like there's times where I made a comment saying where sometimes he's not the Joe that we need him to be with certain things. It's like, bro, you should be calling the fuck out of these people that you have on your show. And it's content, yeah, but you can't dance on that line. Everyone's rooting for these specific people in society to call out these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look what happened to. Again, I'm gonna stop waffling now for people who were like,
yeah.
Oh, you've finished talking about the movie.
Yeah.
But like, look what's happening to Andrew Tate at the minute. I mean,
I know.
They essentially just wiped him off the face of the earth. He done a podcast recently. I haven't actually watched it yet. I can't remember the guy's name, and you would know him. You'd see him from time to time popping up on TikTok and stuff. He has quite a popular podcast. He interviews all these like famous entrepreneurs and like
Yeah.
I guess forward thinkers. And he had Andrew Tate on, and he basically he was like, yeah, this is the exact point I was making the entire time of my content.
Yeah.
Look what happened. Overnight, they wiped me off the face of social media. Every single app, every single platform got rid of me. And he was like, yeah, I had to make a new account on Uber in the UK. All the banks, TSB, Barclays, all them basically told me, no, you're going to have to move your money somewhere else. We don't want to be associated. We don't want anything to do with it. He's like, it's fucking wild. He was like, if I was a regular person, like a regular dude, my life is over. I might as well commit suicide.
Yeah, no, it is true in that way of that they're doing that. And that's what and we're essentially, for the people that you may disagree, we're just talking about a movie that pushed the boundaries of cinema, and essentially that the way that society is going, I think Andrew Tate is playing a character for sure, but he's rich and he does what he wants. And he supposedly, what I've looked into, accumulated that wealth essentially on his own and kind of just built up a brand and a business, and then speaks about these things that I would say 70% of the world thinks. A majority of the world does agree with at least half the shit he says, even if he is playing a character. But I love cinema. I love movies. And for them, I've seen fucked up movies that most people shouldn't see, like a Caligula. I've seen that like twice in my life. And that's a fucking strange, weird, and that you have to just allow it to happen to me. And, because me and you are both horror fans, there is films out there that literally make you question your reality, how you feel about a certain thing, death, the mortality of living in this reality, where you have to let those things exist. You have to, or there's no point of living anymore if you're doing it in a structured way where you have to follow all these guidelines, because that's what every app does now.
Yeah, 100%. I guess then, so closing thoughts on this movie.
Yeah.
You would recommend it? Like I for anybody who hasn't seen it, I would 100% recommend to see this movie at least once. But one thing I will say is make sure you do what I done on Tom's recommendation. You can either take a shit ton of mushrooms,
Yeah.
or if you're not going to
Have a
do that,
beer, smoke some
make
weed.
sure to put your phone in a different room, put your iPad away. Don't do anything like that. Like, genuinely listen to this. Sit down and just give it 90 minutes and actually take the movie in.
Yes, because it's cinematic and it's an amazing film. And like I said, there's so many thoughts that may brought me to wanting to do this episode with you and throwing it in your ear that we should cover this. Is it genuinely, as I was coming inside packing up everything after we watched it and then we put on a movie, but more or less me and my fiance just talked. All I did was take ate like a fucking PA to gram of mushrooms, had no visuals, but then I had a beer or two. But that it made me, and I felt sober, but kind of mushroomed mind, if people understand what psychedelics do, is I analyzed it differently. And we were talking about ghosts and all this stuff. It left me in this weird haunting feeling afterwards. We're just, even when we're talking cleanup things, and later I was like, I'm still shook visibly to my girlfriend, where I'm like, I can't stop analyzing the film. And specifically, it's because of the way it ended too, with this idea that she just walks into the woods and there's a Black Sabbath going on, and then everyone, and that feeling of her just laughing as she just levitates over this bonfire. And back in the day, bonfire comes from bone fire, which is when they used to sacrifice people. So this idea of like, it freaked me out, and I literally like for the whole night thought about like I shouldn't have messed around with the Ouija board when I was a kid. It left me with this feeling of like I don't need to mess with this dark arts anymore.
It's really effective, and I have to commend everybody involved with the movie. From the actors to the director to the writers to sound, everything was like.
Yes.
There's very little I could fault about the movie. I feel like everything slotted in exactly where it should have. And I definitely recommend it to everybody for a one-time view. And even,
One
you know
time.
what, even if you're not, yeah, because I feel like what you said, it's not something that you can stick on every week and be like,
Like
oh yeah,
Hereditary, I can watch Friday 13th every Halloween. I
yeah,
can watch it every other week if I really felt like it, because it's to me those, and I think you would agree that those things like Nightmare on Elm Street, comfort films.
yeah,
I don't, because I grew up watching them and it was something that was kind of taboo when I was younger. They comfort me. That fun slasher film. There's films like this, The Witch and Hereditary, that it's 2 times, maybe 3 or 4 in your lifetime, and that's about it. I'm good.
yeah, and it's something that I would recommend, even if you're not a fan of straight up horror movies. I would try and give it the time, because it's it's uh it's a great movie.
Yeah. Probably
Um,
all this just me and Dan just showed our cups of Michael
yeah,
Myers.
sorry for everybody who's on the audio there. We're just like showing off cups. Um, so I guess in closing then, where can people check you out, find you, support you? What have you got coming up?
So we have lots of ideas and stuff to do on both of our shows. I believe a lot of stuff's coming. This is gonna be released before Halloween anyway. So like we have a lot of stuff coming up. Aaron, like everyone tune in. You can find us at Strange Brew TTV on Twitch, Strange Brew Podcast on everything else like Facebook and YouTube. We're going live on October 28th at 6:30 Eastern time. For people across the pond, it's going to be later, but if you're staying up, you're drinking, you're coming down from whatever the fuck you're doing throughout that Halloween weekend and that Friday, tune into the live. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to show videos. I think each have a scary story. And then we also have our Halloween special, which we're doing all about the Ouija board. But we have episodes coming with Aaron where we're going to do a part 2 of a sexual specter episode. So there's a lot of stuff coming for Halloween, because I fucking love this time. It gets my dick hard, as I said on the fucking haunted episode. This stuff that like, it just gets me going. Like I just love talking about this stuff. I love Halloween and fall. I hate winter, but I love the lead up to winter.
Yeah, likewise. And if I could, I would probably live in that season forever, just
Me
like
too.
that,
Yeah.
an eternal like lead up to Halloween.
But
Yeah,
like
for
one
me,
day is super hot, so you can go swimming.
You know what? I wouldn't actually even mind if the weather was just really nice, but it was just around that build up to Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the usual Class Horrorcast on any podcast platforms. ClassHorrorcast.com. First Class Horror on all social media. I do actually have a new link. It'll be in the bio on any of my socials for a thing called SpeakPipe. So
I
if
saw you
anybody,
doing that. I was
if
like,
anybody
oh,
wants to send in questions, comments, remarks, whatever you want to do, I'm going to dedicate maybe an episode a month or something. And I'm just going to do like audience clips and stuff like that and answer them or whatever. Yeah, other than that, there's a lot of stuff coming, like Tom said. I also have a lot of stuff on my side involving Tom. We're gonna shoot for a Halloween Resurrection
I'm excited for that.
commentary.
Honestly.
I can't wait for that. We have the 98
Zombie.
Souls. We have a Rob Zombie. There's like
So
multiple,
much shit that works.
yeah.
I
There's
saw that you were doing that fan thing of getting people to like, I was like, oh shit. And then like, I don't know if it's different where you have to do it within a computer. It's like allow your settings. Cause I was going to send you a fucking message. Somebody said that we should do that. Well, I could play with the idea of being able to call a number and leave like a voicemail.
Mhm.
I would just like to see what happens. Cause I'm sure I would have a couple people that be like, you ableist piece of trash. Like I just have people screaming at me from a phone, angry at my point of views. But I'm sure there's some fans that would love to just leave me weird shit to play on the show. And we've toyed with that too. It's just maybe even playing at the end of the episodes if we ever establish something like that, where you can call in and we'll play your voicemails and maybe respond to them at the end of certain episodes. Cause I think
I think that'd be really interesting.
it's like so you're
now
yelling about shit.
I could regret it. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. Yeah, appreciate everyone. If you've got
Fuck yeah.
to the very end of this, we appreciate you. We've been kind of a little bit all over the place, I suppose, at times.
For sure. I thought it would get this way though.
Yeah, we have a tendency to do that. Like I said, keep an eye out over the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of stuff coming, and I'm assuming that, you know, even though it's coming into the build up of Halloween, we're probably going to have even more stuff towards the tail end of the year as well.
I'm sure too. With the Christmas is it's so many movies we could talk about around Christmas too.
Yeah,
I know Anton wants to do Christmas Horror Story with fucking William Shatner.
Mm-hmm.
So I know he wants to talk about that, and I was like, that could be all three of us for his show because Anton's just trying to get a show off the ground. That's one of my co-hosts. He does a thing called House of Trash, and he's just starting to get a show up, but talk about essentially trashy and obscure movies and like specifically horror movies and stuff. So just obscure stuff like the trashiest fucking weird. Like we did that what's that? I was like, why can't I think of this? The movie where people drank alcohol and they fucking street trash.
Oh yeah.
We did that because Anton told me to watch that movie. I was like, never seen it. And I was like, okay, like it's fucking weird. So there's stuff like going on with that will also involve Aaron. So I'm fucking excited for a lot of the stuff we're going to do.
Yeah. I feel like
forward.
I had like a huge hiatus there for a while, and I don't know, not that I lost the passion or anything like that, but I was like, I don't know which direction to go in. There's like so many different things and places and, you know, things I want to try and do. And I was like, no, now I feel like reinvigorated, refreshed, and just ready to kind of get cracking again. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Fuck yeah.
Being able to do this with you. I feel like you're one of the driving forces maybe in getting me back on the horse, and like
I like that because you also drive me. And I think that we've realized that with our connection is that it's nice that I find that we think very similar in a lot of ways where I have, because of what we do at Strange Brew, we're able to dive into weird folklore, everything strange, real stories. But on your show, we're able to dive into something I've always loved, which I've toyed with, is talking about more horror movie aspects of things. So we kind of get best of both worlds with both of our shows because I love horror and then I will never run out of probably ideas. I'll watch something like, yo, you want to fucking do this?
Yeah, I've noticed, which is good, which helps me because I'm quite, I can be like really indecisive with things. I'm like, should I, shouldn't I? No, that's probably a shit idea. Like when I tossed out the idea of Halloween Resurrection, I was like, I know he's going to be like, what the fuck do you want to do that for?
I think it's worth it.
Yeah, well, like even if you didn't, I was like, because I was like, okay, if he doesn't want to do Halloween Resurrection, I was like, could I pull off an entire commentary solo? And I was like, oh god, that's gonna be tough.
Oh, I've tried to debate on doing episodes through the Patreon where I just talk, or Tom talks or something like that. I'm like, I don't know if someone wants to listen to me talk for an hour and a half about my stupid ass thoughts that I have every waking day of my life. And that's why I think we have a lot of stuff in the works. And I like that. Like these ideas that we're toying with. It was funny when we were talking again about Rob Zombie. I was like, fuck yeah. Like let's get into that stuff, because there's also leading up to the stuff that he's working on now too.
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff, and I love him again for similar reasons to what we talked about earlier.
I do feel like, if we just keep going, we're just going to talk for another hour for everybody.
Yeah, he's just one of those filmmakers that has always been himself, no matter what he's done. He's always stayed true to himself, which I love.
He's like doing what he wants to do, you know?
Yeah, and I have to appreciate that, like, because that's kind of the life I would like to live.
Even my music, I'm like, I still create my hip hop songs, I still rap, and I still write music. You know, a couple hundred people may see it on YouTube. Essentially, I don't do it for anyone else but myself and my own weird therapeutic shit. And to me, that's how Rob Zombie feels in the way he does his stuff. It's like, I just want to do it because it's my thing.
Well, look, I'm gonna attempt to bring this to a close because I can't shut my mouth.
Me neither. I was like, I could do this for another fucking hour or two. It's like, what about Witches Canal so we get into?
It's like I said, it's been a pleasure as always. 100%. It's been fun. I hope everybody listened and enjoyed. If you did make it to the end, you're now a hero.
Yes.
Made it through our babbling for the last 2 hours and 15 minutes. And yeah, just keep an eye out on both of our socials. A lot of stuff coming over the next couple of months. And yeah, we'll see everybody soon.
Yeah, peace out, fuckers. Stay strange.